I'm your host, Davida Shinsky, and you're listening to Live Without Limits Dreams Come True with the Right Mindset. And today's presentation is What's Your Adversity Quotient and How can you can it help you handle life's challenges? For one thing, great leaders are known for great qualities. And such an indomitable will, accountability, patience, and the ability to adapt and even thrive on any environment they find themselves in. But at as any adult knows, leadership roles don't only apply to politics, nor do they end in the corporate world. Leaders and their leadership qualities are expedient in all walks of life, from the big to the small, serious to frivolous. And the first thing I'm going to talk to you about is that there's different types of leaders, and you need to understand exactly what type of leader you are. And not everyone is a born leader, but you can learn to become a leader. Hence, these qualities can be honed and developed by everyone, kids and adults, male and female. Sadly, families, schools, and society at large seldom teach people how to be good leaders. They'd rather drum into their psyche obedience and fear of failure. A lot of people grow up being told what to do for all their lives, and they suddenly shiver and break out and face real life problems and adversities because no one is telling them what to do anymore. The problem is, while families, schools, and society at large might be great at helping people develop their intelligence quotient, social quotient, as well as emotional quotient, they do a poor job at developing their adversity quotient. And without or lack of this important quotient, the rest may be insignificant in handling life's challenges. So, what are the four types of quotients? In case you're wondering what these types of quotients mean, well, the first one is the intelligence quotient, and a measure of a person's comprehensive ability to handle information, the ability to solve math problems, monetize facts, and recall subject matter when needed. Emotional quotient. This measures of a person's ability to maintain and to be at peace with others. It may involve matters as mundane as keeping to time, being responsive in conversations, being humble, genuine, and consistent with others. Yet it has far reaching effects. The social quotient, the measure of a person's ability to connect, make friends, and build a network of friends, as well as the ability to maintain it for years and decades to come. The larger and stronger the network, the more a person is considered to have a high social quotient. Adversity quotient, according to Paul G. Stokes, PhD, in his book, Adversity Quotient, turning obstacles into opportunities is the ability of a person to deal with adversities in his or her life. In other words, the adversity quotient is a purely measure of a person's resilience. Adversity or adaptability quotient is the ability to go through difficulties, pains, disappointments, trauma, and whatever other anything that's on your mind. Now, before I go on, I want to talk about this because this really plays not into having good leadership skills, but it also plays into becoming independent, living the life you were meant to live on your terms and not someone else's terms. Parents love to script their children and they love to hold them back, especially if they fear that they just don't want to be alone in their own age. So, what do? They keep their children close. They don't let go of the umbilical cord. And by doing so, they're damaging that individual so that when they're gone, how is that person going to go on and make a life for themselves? For many years, I used to say that to my mother about my older sister, and my older sister is only deaf, had more opportunities than I did when it came to employment. But because my mother was never allowing her to be independent, to think for herself, to get beyond, and the life she was living, that my sister's day consisted of waking up in the morning, getting up, getting at where are we going today? What are we doing today? And my mother passed away more than 10 years ago, and my sister is just like a lost little child. She doesn't know how to clean the house herself. She doesn't know how to get on the bus and go and do things for herself just to be able to be independent. They made her so dependent on them and were constantly making her feel like she was unloved and unwanted, that today she's 72 years old and still thinks like a child, looking because her personality is such that she's the steadiness, that she desperately wants that love that she didn't have all those years. And so what does she do? She's made herself dependent on other people and just has no life. And what has that done to her? What has that done to her circle of friends or her being able to accept herself for who she is? It's created a lot of problems. So until you are able to understand this and take control of your life, where do you expect to be if this similar situation happens to you? Why is the adversity quotient important in life? Having a low AQ or adversity quotient isn't something that can easily be augmented or walked around, as in the case of low social quotient or intelligence quotient, as every individual is bound to face challenges at one point or another in their life. This could be the loss of a huge sum of money, a job, a loved one, or some other tragedy. Without high adversity quotients, sadness, anxiety, depression, and suicide are usually not far behind. In other words, the adversity quotient can help prevent the onset of some mental health problems. There's no denying that adversities are an inescapable part of life, so we should prepare for them. It is true that people have higher EQ and SQ tend to be and tend to do better in life than those with high IQ or low EQ and SQ. However, none of those qualities should save a person from the devastating blow of a gut-wrenching setback. Escape a high adversity quotient. But having a high adversity quotient is even more than that. Having a high adversity quotient has been linked to some very expedient abilities an individual ought to have in order to succeed in life. The higher adversity quotient indicates, according to developmental psychology, Emmy Warner, who has a PhD on resilience theory. Children who have high adversity quotient also exhibit the following characteristics: high reasoning, the ability to face complex and convoluted problems without backing down. This leads to more success in solving problems, and that builds their self-confidence. The emotional pillars, they tend to develop more support systems outside their immediate family. For example, they usually have at least one supportive friend who they can lean on. This means they literally break or brace themselves for impact and also help others like themselves go through the hard times. The inner detection. People with high adversity quotient tend to make decisions in their own because they believe they're in charge of their fate. They avoid the victim mindset while embracing the victor mindset. Sociability. They most times show a higher capacity to interact with others well and engage in social activities without feel threatened or worried. Autonomy. People with higher AQ can accomplish tasks alone without receiving help. They will most likely try to push their limits before asking for assistance. Thankfully, the adversity quotient, just like all other forms of the quotients, can be gradually improved upon. And one of the things I'm going to say is I embraced a lot of the adversity quotient because I was determined to be independent and hold a job. And for a lot of reasons, I literally had to disassociate myself from my family and was homeless on 3 different occasions because of it. And that was because my mother wanted to prove to me that as long as she controlled the money, she could control me. And the funny thing is, I may have been homeless 3 times, but at the same time, I found a way to get out of it. And finally, the last few years of her life, because she realized I was not going to break, she and the funny thing is I there were many times I literally did not talk to her for years, and then she would get nice and she would get okay, but then she couldn't help it. She would just fall back in old behaviors. The problem is these people have very much insecurity, and by trying to control their children or other people, that somehow makes them feel powerful. So when you get around someone, you have to understand where they're coming from, and either both of you have to be willing to adapt and change the relationship, or the only thing you can do is get away from them because they will break you any way they can if they feel that they can do this. So, 6 ways you can develop your adversity quotient. These are the following ways to develop your AQ. Study, practice, Stoicism. Stoicism is a philosophy that has regained traction in recent times thanks to the works of authors like Ryan Holiday. The philosophy encourages an acceptance and even love of one's fate, no matter what it will take. Or maybe it requires that you get objective about life rather than looking away, or, or worse, sugarcoating the brutal nature, hiding under wishful thinking. Once you accept life for what it is, you can be better face it because you get prepared. Practice self accountability. Accept the responsibility for your actions. Admit that you can be wrong sometimes. And when you make mistakes, learn from them. Be focused. We are in a social media age where people are getting more and more hooked on the internet. Social media is great, but too much of it keeps you away from reality and makes you lose sight of what is real, immediate, and important. Be courageous. Learn to act despite your fear. Learn to be comfortable with uncertainties. Build your network. Build a network of friends that you can fall back on when things get rough and confusing. Don't lean on your strength alone. Reflect on the past and the future. Mediate on the things that you've done and how they could have been done better. That way, you learn from your mistakes and do better next time. Also, think about the future and all the hurdles and opportunities that it holds if you never give up and keep going, working on your quotients. Keep this in mind in life. Those who don't go crazy, especially when they suffer multiple setbacks within a short intervals, are those who can accept that they are the masters of their fate, no matter what might be had or happened. And they believe that things are bound to get better as they don't easily lose hope, even when the going gets tough. Having some of that, don't make the mistake of focusing on other IQ, EQ, or SQ alone, but realize that all quotients work together to create a well adjusted and functioning individual, an intelligent, loving, powerful, and informative you. Now, another thing that I want to say to finish this up is each of us have certain behavior patterns that are natural to us. Some of them are our strengths and some of them are our weaknesses. And if you tend to be more outgoing and more of a dominant personality or have very good interpersonal skills as your strengths, then you're more likely to be willing to break away from that family. But if you're very introverted, then you're going to allow them to control you. So understanding that these are all behavior patterns that we have, and we can move within them because they're all within us. Some of them are our strengths, some of them are our weaknesses, but we have to be able to move within them in order to be the people that we were meant to be. And instead of letting other people take control of our lives. Now, here's the other situation. If you want to learn to take control of yourself, to to live the life you were meant to be, then you can take my 5-day challenge. And that challenge is change your thoughts challenge.com/ join the challenge. And when you join the challenge, there's 5 things that we're going to cover. The first being how when you let your unconscious thoughts control your behavior, then you are basically living out something that you want to be, but at the same time are afraid to be. The next thing we're going to talk about on the second day is toxic relationships and how they affect your mental health. The third day, we're going to talk about the workplace culture. The fourth day, we're going to talk about how to change those negative thoughts into positive thoughts. And then on the fifth day, we're going to talk about where to go from here. And remember, again, you can go to the website changeyourthoughtschallenge.com/ join the challenge to take part in this challenge that's titled Change Your Thoughts, Transform Your Life.